I'm loving the pop off.
What's good? Welcome back to the Pop Off Podcast, a conversation show about the House of the Dragon Season 2 premiere. I am Ralph Compiano. I'm your host, and I am joined by His Grace, Ehren Fox, and King Aegon the Magnanimous, Skyler Riesberg, as we break down the premiere of House of the Dragon. Gentlemen, this is a franchise that we have been borderline addicted to and celebrating for years now. I think for the better part of a decade, we have been tremendous fans of Game of Thrones. Ehren, you longer than anybody else that I know. The excitement level going into this episode, Season 2, Episode 1, House of the Dragon, where does it stack up compared to your excitement level for, like, let's say Season 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of Game of Thrones? Did it ever reach that peak? Or is this something that you're like, it's coming back, I'm ready for it, but I'm not like counting down the days on my calendar, marking it for, 250 days like we did with Thrones? What's your relationship with your excitement level so far, Ehren?
I'd say I was excited to have Game of Thrones back. I don't think I can compare it to the original Game of Thrones show, though, as far as giddiness, childhood joy that I'm going into it with. It's kind of more like happy to have it back in my life, excitement, and just looking forward to it more than anything. I was definitely excited about it. I'm really excited for this season as a whole. Compared to the first season, I think it's going to be a lot more exciting for the fans.
I think that I get where you're coming from, Ehren. Like season 4 and 5, Game of Thrones was like we built on season 1, 2, and 3. Those seasons were amazing, and then so when we got to 4 and 5, it was like little did we know, but like the peak of the show, and so it was amazing at that point. Right now, we're still building into it. I would say because it's a shorter story, I guess the episodes feel a little more dramatic. Like there's a lot more going on than especially some of those last seasons of Game of Thrones. But I was excited, but not like over ecstatic. I'm just excited that there's a good show on TV that I'm sitting down on Sunday and watching again, with friends, loved ones, all the above, and we're back.
Yeah, it's more similar to like the relationship with event TV, right? Like Sunday night, I know that at 8 o'clock, I have something to do. I don't have to scroll through Netflix and decide on what I'm going to watch. HBO has already programmed it for me. But as far as like the actual excitement level, like with Thrones, I would rewatch Thrones from 1 to whatever season we were on before the premiere of the next season. With this, there's only one season, and for some reason, I couldn't get myself to rewatch the entire thing. So what I did instead was I watched a recap on YouTube that was like 25 minutes long to kind of prepare for it and tell me where we left off. And like you said, Berg, like we had already established those relationships with Tyrion and Cersei and Jon and Dany and all these people, where I'm watching the recap and I'm like, holy fuck, I totally forgot about Lord Corlys Velaryon. Like that guy was sick in the first season, but I forgot that he existed. Only like Rhaenyra and Daemon and even like Rhaenys, I guess, and then the kids kind of popped up back into my mind. But I think it'll be most helpful for the listener if we do kind of a where did we leave off with season 1, because I watched the recap, took down some notes. So I'll need your guys' help to clear up any of this if I get anything wrong. But season 1 of House of the Dragon opens 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones. It is setting up Team Black, which is Team House Targaryen, versus Team Green, which is the House of the Hightowers. King Viserys, the man who essentially gets leprosy, I think is how we defined it, Ehren, at dinner the other night, or all over his body herpes, whichever one you really want to pick. He ends up dying, and he had named Rhaenyra, his daughter, to be his heir, which was very, frowned upon according to the rest of the kingdom, because it was going to be a woman who was going to be the leader. She was going to be the queen on the Iron Throne rather than the king. And then her and Alicent have a falling out to a certain degree for a bunch of different threads and a bunch of different things. And Alicent, because her father, Sir Otto Hightower, who had been the hand to 2 previous kings, including Viserys, wanted Aegon to become the king. And Alicent's like, I love power. I'm power-hungry motherfucker too. Let's make Aegon the king. Turns out he's a little bit of a fuckboy, and we get to find that out throughout this episode even more. He's kind of just a dude that likes to have beers with his boys on a Friday night, as we find out later in this episode. Prince Aemond is the real kind of conniving Malfoy-ish motherfucker in the family. He's the one with the eye patch. He gets his eye ripped out by, I believe it's Luke in season 1. And we end season 1 with Aemon's dragon disobeying his command and eating Luke and his dragon in midair after they visit House Baratheon to hopefully get House Baratheon to join one of their 2 houses. They're still undecided as far as I know. Then we pick up in season 2, episode 1. I wanted to start with the intro theme. Same theme song, but new intro visual effects, which I thought was interesting. It's almost like a stitching of a blanket. How did you guys feel about that? Just the very first opening thing that we see versus the kind of chess pieces that we've had in previous Throne seasons.
Yeah, I'm always just looking for like the context there. Like, what are they trying to tell me with this opening scene? Maybe I didn't get an answer out of it. Obviously, I saw they're stitching a bunch of shit, but like, what does that mean? And that's what I look for. I don't think I ever got a clear answer what the like blood or whatever you would call it that was flowing through kind of meant or was representing.
Blood.
Yeah. But I guess that's what I'm looking for all the time. I get excited with their opening scenes. Like, I'm paying attention.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I will say I did not watch it this time. I was making a bowl of cereal while the title track was rolling.
Gotta get that snack in.
But if I remember correctly, I think the blood is like the Targaryen bloodline and how it's kind of fissuring in these kind of divergent paths, kind of setting up the events of the show, and the stitching maybe just the, I guess, branching of the Targaryen house into kind of that Hightower Targaryen and then the Valyrian Targaryen factions.
Yeah, the family trees colliding, coming together, because that was actually my biggest takeaway from watching the recap was they packed a lot of threading and manipulating and relationships and just storylines into season 1. Like, I was like getting exhausted watching the recap of season 1. I was like, holy shit, so much happened. Whereas in season 1 of Game of Thrones, like, I felt like it was very tangible and I could feel it and I could track it pretty well. They did a good job of kind of slowly pacing their way through it, where I'm not saying that season 1 of this was rushed by any means, but it definitely was more complicated than I think other seasons of Thrones. But with this one, season 2, episode 1, we kind of pick up like right where we left off, except we open on a familiar territory that we haven't seen yet in this show, and that is in Winterfell. And I believe it's Jacaerys Targaryen goes up to Winterfell and he meets with Lord Cregan Stark. They go to the wall, and he shows him that there is the wall, which we became really familiar with in Thrones, and that they're not just keeping away wildlings and snow up there, they're keeping away what he calls death. What did you guys think of our first peek at not just Winterfell, but also the wall and House of the Dragon?
I just love all those callbacks that they do. You know, like, this is a show of these 2 families divided, and it's like civil war within the Targaryen household. You get caught up in that, and then somebody just pulls a character to the side and they're like, hey, this is like the secret that a lot of people in the realm know. This is what we're guarding right now. This is like the main focus, even though this whole thing is about the Targaryens battling it out for power within their own family. But yeah.
I find it kind of funny that he's kind of abstract as to what they're holding back, you know, when he says death. You know, you understand in Game of Thrones why people wouldn't necessarily believe the White Walkers exist, because magic as a whole pretty much hasn't been in the realm that entire time. But it seems like if you were talking to a Targaryen who flew there on a dragon, he might have a more easy time believing what is out there and what the real threat to the realm is.
I think that's what Jacaerys said, is that when the original Targaryens first visited the wall, the dragons had almost like a dog with like a electric collar around it and a fence that built into their yard effect where they wouldn't go over the wall. They like refused to. And we ended up seeing like what happens in Thrones. But I thought that was really fascinating just to open there rather than opening on Rhaenyra or Daemon. So then we get a raven that arrives at the wall, and it informs Jacaerys that his brother Lucerys, Luke, has been killed. And anytime that the ravens pop up in the show, I'm like kind of on high alert now. When the ravens would show up in Thrones, I was like, oh, it's a raven, whatever. There's a little bit of ink on a scroll. I get it. But in this show, it feels like there's more weight to it. It almost feels like a Woj bomb in Westeros. It's like a huge fucking deal anytime one of these things pops up. And so he gets the news and he has to, bail on Winterfell at that point. But he does get the Stark's allegiance to pledge 2,000 men to his family's
Dude,
cause.
2,000
so
old guys.
Northerners.
Yeah.
The Northerners. But, they're badasses.
I'm sure.
So, all right. Well, actually, I want to stick on this for just a second. The White Walkers were such a critical part of Thrones. Like, that was the overwhelming, looming force over the entire show. Like, no matter what happened between Cersei and the Baratheons and the Lannisters, like, whatever. All of that really, it kind of didn't matter once we got to, like, all right, the White Walkers coming. We're all going to have to group together. Do you want to see them show up in the show at all, or do you want to mainly just stay focused on Targaryens and dragons?
It's a good question.
I don't think they will. I could be off base, but in Thrones, the last winter was like, it wasn't around the time of Aegon the Conqueror. It was even before that. They said, why do you think my ancestors built this wall 700 years ago? So I don't think they will, but I would also say no, I would not like to see them.
Yeah, it would have to make sense. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Because you named it, and you're right. The White Walkers being the focus of the show was like, hell yes, we love it. They didn't show us them a lot in the first like 4 or 5 seasons. You kind of got more glimpses and glimpses of them. And so you were just always wanting more and more. But if it wasn't the White Walkers that you were focused on, I feel like the Targaryens would be like the number 2. They got dragons. They're badass. Daenerys was appealing as hell to watch on TV. And now it's the same thing here. So.
Can you go a little bit deeper on that, Ehren? Because there's so many fucking Aegons in this world. Like, even Jon ends up being an Aegon. Can you tell us about Aegon the Conqueror and how he's different from Aegon the fuckboy that we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're just 2 different Aegons, obviously. But I guess one thing, as you're giving your recap, that I wanted to kind of circle back to, that you bring it up, in the recap, before the show, they show, Alicent talking to Viserys on his deathbed, and he starts talking about the prophecy of ice and fire, the Song of Ice and Fire. I thought that was really interesting, because if you guys remember, towards the end of season 1, they had that family dinner, and it seemed like all was well between the Greens and the Blacks. Alicent was ready to give Rhaenyra the throne, but Viserys couldn't get his words out fast enough before dying. And so he was saying, this is about Aegon, and she thinks it's her son, but it was about Jon Snow the whole time. Well, I guess that's up in the air, but it was about Jon Snow the whole time, leading to her thinking that her son is, this prophetic figure. And then the irony of seeing who he actually is a fuckboy, like you put it, it's just
worst,
dude.
Just
tragic twisted fate.
Can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine like your ESPN like in 2002 and like everybody is like prophesizing that LeBron is gonna be like the savior of the NBA, and then he comes in the league and he just behaves like Jordan Poole, like he's just a total douchebag, and he's just like flirting with chicks, like he's putting up like really inefficient numbers instead of being like the savior of the league. I mean, that's essentially what Aegon is, right? Like, so we'll get to him in a second. Then we move down to, I don't know where we're at here. Is this Dragonstone, where Rhaenyra and her crew is at? And Daemon gets off of his, or Rhaenys gets off of her dragon. Daemon pulls up on her. He's like, hey, we got to go kill Vhagar and Aemon, his rider. And he, quote unquote, commands Rhaenys to go with him. And she says to him, hey, I'd obey your orders if you were the king. So, like, you can't give me a command because you're not the fucking king. I thought this was just like, all right, we're back, we're in it. And I thought this was a great Kickstarter to be like, okay, the beef is still very much alive. I thought we were going to dance around in Winterfell a little bit longer than that. We're back at Dragonstone. And what are you guys' thoughts on Daemon as a whole? Is that a guy that you root for, or did him kind of choking out Rhaenyra in the finale last year make you turn a blind eye to some of his negative actions and be like, I still support this dude?
I think Daemon is the coolest. I think obviously he's got his problems, and don't get me wrong, like not a supporter of that, but
he's toxic masculinity kind of personified.
Well,
he's kind of the future of this universe.
For all his complications, he only ever wants to do what's the best for his family. Just
Yep.
like Aemond is Aegon's kind of sword in the night. Daemon was that for Viserys, loyal to a fault,
Yep.
but then also misguided. Um, his presumptions and rash decision making sometimes cause him problems, but ultimately just a loyal family member trying to do the best for his family, and he's a badass to add to that.
He is a
And he's fucking his
badass.
niece too.
Yeah, there's
That's
a lot
weird,
of
yeah.
that going on, but at least he's not fucking his sister at the end of the day. But with everything we're
Aegon.
talking about, his demeanor and the way he carries himself, like as a viewer who might have looked a little into the future on here to see like how's this going, like looking for some spoilers. The story's out there, but doesn't remember it that well. He's gonna meet just a bad end, just some live by the sword, die by the sword kind of thing. Like he's gonna have to pay for just his arrogance, his attitude that he carries around all the time. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I just don't think it's gonna end well for that guy, and I think it's gonna happen quickly.
Mm. All right, so then we flash forward to Rhaenyra and her. Well, we flash forward to both women, kind of the two central women that we followed in the first season, Rhaenyra and Alicent. So Rhaenyra Targaryen, the queen, quote unquote, and Queen Alicent, King Aegon's mother, and they're experiencing two very different things. Rhaenyra's grieving the death of her son Luke viciously; it's eating her up on the inside, and on the other hand, Queen Alicent is getting her vagina eaten by Sir Criston Cole. That was not the first. I didn't think that's how we were going to be reintroduced to Queen Alicent. Just her gripping the chair. I thought she was going to be like pregnant or something like that, like popping out a baby. Turns out she's got some other vaginal stuff going on. Kristen Cole is munching that box. That's two very different realities that these women are living in, and I thought that was just a great, like, I don't know, just kind of. It's a good way to parallel their experiences right now because Alicent is like, she's moderately aware of the fact. Is she aware of the fact that her son just killed her nephew at this point? And she's like still kind of celebrating it. So that fucked me up a little bit versus Rhaenyra. And she's just absolutely, I mean, she's in shambles right now at this point.
Yeah, I think Alicent looks at it more as like, that was a calculated mistake. Not a lot of emotion behind like, oh, poor Luke's dead. More, that was the wrong move to make, Amen. Now you just started, like, we were getting allies. We were getting ready to fuck him up. And now you just started this war, and now we're closer to having dragon on dragon battle because of what you just did. So kind of like air rather than emotion, but who knows? Everyone deals with grief in different ways. Maybe she just needs Kristen down there munching on that box to get over it.
I kind of disagree with you a little bit there, Berg.
Okay.
I think, when they're having their small council meeting shortly after that, one of Alicent's main concerns is if Rhaenyra had gotten her letters. I got the vibe that she clearly never intended for that to happen because I think, when all this was going down at the end of season 1, she thought that her son was the prince who was promised, and she just wanted everything to transfer smoothly. And I think she was trying to facilitate that. And then that happened, and obviously, like an event like that creates a rift that you can't really come back from. And I kind of got the vibe that she was definitely sorrowful for the whole thing, and because I think she does bear love for Rhaenyra and all that.
Well, Aemon says that at the end when he's meeting with Otto. He says that, or no, I think he says it to Kristen. Kristen's trying to sympathize with Alicent because he loves her, or at least loves having sex with her. And he's like, she's kind of a tragic figure here. And he goes, she has love for the enemy, which makes her an idiot. So Aemon's totally given up on her perspective and her power and her influence. And he's just trying to take everything in his own hands, kind of like Daemon, right? Like they're two aggro leading motherfuckers that just they're about that action. They want to get to the Dance of the Dragons as soon as possible. They want to get to episode 4 right now in episode 1. And they're like, everybody else is just holding me back right now. So let's sit on the first council meeting because I thought that was fascinating. It's the first time we see Aegon at the head of the table in these small council meetings, which we saw so much of in Thrones. I thought were really kind of my favorite parts of those episodes. Tyrion being at the table, Tywin being there, and seeing how they handle their democracy, really. And their table has the weirdest crew of people at it. It's Aegon, it is Otto, who's the Hand of the King, Queen Alicent, and then a new Lannister from last season, Tyland, who was the Master of Coin, and then Aegon's toddler son Jaehaerys, who's just fucking shit up in the meeting and making every bad decision possible and just annoying everybody, and then two other guys who I didn't get their names. I'm not sure exactly what their roles are.
One's a
and
maester.
then Aemon crashes the party, and he comes in, and Alicent is like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "My king summoned me," and he says that he is my best sword and he's my brother. I need him here right now. And you can just feel the kind of tension when he walks in the room. Like, all right, this is kind of the guy. Like, this is the real leader here. Whereas Aegon would literally rather be slamming natty lights with his boys in the evening, like he does later in the episode. I mean, that's like his whole vibe to me. Is he just wants to fuck? Is he the one that jerked off outside of a window too in the last season? Like, I think it was him, right?
Who else would it be?
Yeah, I think it was. It was the younger version of him. But yeah, that's just a great little sequence too, because we get to see, him kind of Joffrey-esque, right? Like, he is making fun of Tywin Lannister. He wants him to get on his knees and let his kid ride him as a pony. And then Alicent stands up to him. He's like, dude, we have more important matters to discuss right now than watching you use your power to your own amusement.
Yeah, I mean, he's a psychopath who doesn't really care about what's going on at all. And I mean, even Alicent and Otto are onto it during some of their conversations they've had where they're talking about their strategy for their overall power, and basically say he'll get bored of it down the road. We just need to navigate him now until he basically hands the reins over to us and it's our time. So, I mean, he's just getting played too at the same point, but it doesn't make up for his just lack of morality overall. Like, I'm interested to see how he grieves for his son. When it's all said. Not that I don't think it'll be like a genuine sorrowful reaction. Just these are kind of sociopaths we're dealing with some of these characters. And so, I don't know. I'm interested to see the take. Like, what are we going to get from that? How's that really going to affect him?
I think he's going to blow up. Like, right? Like, I mean,
Unleash
he's
Aemon.
been kind of like, I think he's been like kind of loose cannon, because there's two sides to him. He doesn't seem eager to impress the council because it's family members that he's grown up with. He's known them his entire life. But then we see him in kind of his, I don't know if you call it like a petitioning session, where like the citizens of King's Landing come to him and they're like, I need more sheep, or I need more money for, smithing. And he just wants to give them everything. So he's kind of like eager to be beloved amongst like the actual citizens of King's Landing, versus I don't think he cares about what his family members' impressions of him are. Like, that doesn't impact him as much. Now, is that going to take a turn now that his kid is dead? And I guess we can go to that part, because I was curious what you guys thought about, like, really the last 10 minutes of this episode. They're putting it in the hands of two guys who Daemon visits in King's Landing, and they're essentially hitmen, right? Like, one of them is a guard, and then the other one is just some lowly ratchet dude, just like living in the streets, losing too much money to FanDuel, and he needs to repay his debts. And so Daemon pulls up on them, and he's like, hey, if you kill the platinum-haired bastard with one eye, I've got a big old bag for you. And from then on out, like, the whole episode is just on their shoulders. How did you guys feel about that decision? Because that's kind of bold to go away from, the characters we've had this relationship with the first season, versus two guys we just met that are literally named Blood and Cheese.
Right.
Like, this is, I mean, they're not like going to be characters that we see in the next episode, I'm sure. Like, I think they're probably done after this, but they end up going to Queen Elena's room, taking her hostage. They were supposed to kill Aemond, that's what Daemon wanted, at least, and what Rhaenyra wanted. And instead of killing him, they kill their son, who is 4, 5, 6 years old, that we had just seen at the meeting as the spoiled little toddler. Bad way to go out for him. And then Helena goes to Queen Alicent's room and walks in on her mom having sex with Kristen. I mean, they just can't stop fucking each other, apparently. That's just like their thing now. But yeah, how did you guys feel about that? Like, that last 10 minutes of the episode?
I mean, I think we shouldn't forget that, I forget Luke's dragon's name, but that little bitch, he disobeyed orders first, came out of nowhere, threw a little fireball at Vhagar. It's like those small dogs always messing with the big dogs, and then they find out that the big dogs can be about that action, and they learn to respect them. But what an awful move out of that dragon. Just got himself killed, got Luke killed. But to your point, on this scene, from a directional standpoint, I I think I liked it. I'm still digesting it. I mean, we just finished the episode, but I think I liked following those characters. I hate also how reckless they got, to your point, Ehren, because if they killed Eamon, like as audience members, even in the show, would have been like an eye for an eye, fucked up, sure, but deserved. And then they kill this like 4-year-old, 6-year-old boy, and it's just, I mean, I think he killed the boy, pretty sure. Don't think that's confirmed, but reckless, just totally. That's what happens when you put two guys named Blood and Cheese, though, on the job, and they start getting really paranoid, and so they just kill the first person they can find, basically.
The first male that they can find with platinum hair. Right. Like, did they miss the whole part about this guy has one eye? Because, like, that's pretty big, right? Like, he's going to have an eye patch. He's not just going to be rocking, like, an empty socket. Like, and he's also got, like, a blue eye under there now, which is kind of badass. I forgot about that in the recap. Yeah, I mean, all right. So, like, that's kind of the whole episode. I want to know, how do you guys feel about this episode as a whole? You got a 1 to 10 it, IMDb style. Where does it rank? Or how would you rate it? Because right now, I mean, I loved it. I had a lot of fun with it. It was just north of an hour. I was entertained the entire time. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt welcome back in the world. I was grateful to have it back. Like you said, Berg, it was nice to have a TV show back that I give a shit about, because that's few and far between now. Like, it's The Bear, it's The Boys to an extent. Mm-hmm. Like, that's really about it for my relationship to TV. I think I would probably give it like an 8.2 out of 10. Does that sound reasonable enough, or are you guys going to go a little bit higher or lower? If 10 is like Cersei blows up the Sept episode, like, that's as good as it gets for me. That's probably one of my favorite episodes of TV ever. I'd
probably go a little lower. Personally, like, maybe, but I did watch, so I told you guys I did a rewatch, but I really just watched episode 1, and then the show was coming up, and so I had to watch episode 10. So that's really what just happened. Got the beginning, got the end. In episode 1,
you did the front page and you did the first page and the last page thing with a book where you're like, I wonder if this book's going to be good. Let me read the first page and the last page to figure out if I should read the other 375 pages.
Dude, it was definitely confusing as hell. And I had to watch that recap in the 10th episode, most definitely. Because you forget that Rhaenyra's, the older princess, blows up there and is on her dragon. You forget that scene happens in episode 9. But my point is, episode 1 of season 1 was amazing. There was so much that went down, and I thought they did a really good job of explaining the story. Like, I would maybe give episode 1 a very high ranking from season 1. This one was very good for an introduction back, but I don't know. I guess it felt more building more than anything else, which is fine and important, but I guess I reserve those higher ratings for the pinnacle, like of how do you pull off all those threads that you've been pulling and sewing in there? How do you pull all that off? So I guess that's what I'm waiting for, but like 7.7, almost 8.
Let me ask you this. For a show called House of the Dragon, did it have enough dragons for you? Because that was my issue with the last season. It's like I felt like they were holding back the dragons a little bit. There wasn't like as much of them, and that's like the most critical part of the show. Like, that's the difference between this and Thrones. If you want me invested in this, then let's dragon the fuck up. Give me as many dragons as possible all the time. Just like show me them feeding on goats. Like, I want to see them,
right?
Versus just like people staring at them in awe, like all the way up in the air, while they're just on the ground looking like ants compared to them.
But devil's advocate, do you think they're doing well? Just because, do you think it could get played out potentially, just putting dragons on the screen all the time? I mean, maybe I'm being crazy because dragons are awesome to look at, but like for the 10th time.
I would watch one of these dragons like just break the fourth wall and start doing stand-up comedy.
Whoa, that would be
awesome.
Give
me some more dragon, awesome. Dude.
But just watching them eat goats just randomly in scenes here and there, I don't know, it could be cool. I definitely think they need to find a way to incorporate more dragon, but it feels like maybe they've reached a decision of, well, one, it's expensive. That's probably a huge part of their decision. But also from like a story standpoint, or I guess where they're coming from, they're trying to leave the suspense for the dragon. You leave room for the dragons to have their big moments and only put them in their very big moments. They show them flying around here and there more as like cues of like, hey, something's about to go down. You just saw that dragon right there. But I wish there was a way where they could put more dragons on the screen. I see the challenges that they could be working around trying to do that and keep it exciting.
Sure, I get it. Fuck your challenges.
I mean,
Give me
yeah, I'm more going
dragons.
devil's advocate here. Like, as I say it out
Yeah.
loud, can you really have too much dragon? It seems like you can't, because dragons are dragons.
I mean, we have that moment like with the dudes queuing up the scorpion, shooter for the dragon, and they're like, "It's all right. It's just Vagar." And then Vagar just goes above everybody. It's like, let Vagar, plant his ass down there and, light a couple of dudes on fire just to show him that he still got it. Like, fuck it. Like, just give me some more of that. What about you, Ehren? What are your thoughts on episode as a whole, like rating wise and all of that?
I'm kind of right around you. My gut was like a 7-7. Solid intro. Solid intro back into the season. I thought, we get some good development. I'll say this. I think there's a reason they showed us that scorpion.
Yeah. So
I think the viewers need to be reminded that is in the world, and certainly won't be the last time we see it this season. But one other thing is, if you want more dragons, I have a feeling you're going to get some more dragons.
I want more dragons.
Well, so with the scorpion thing, so they have these scorpions back. It kind of seems like they didn't even need to invent them. They're just kind of stand piece there. Obviously, they built them now, but the technology was there. Where we fast forward to Game of Thrones time, and they, like one of the maesters, that little creepy guy at the end who resurrected the mountain, is like, "Hey, boy, do I have something crazy for you guys. Look at this lost hidden technology." And I mean, it gets lost within the course of like 200 years. It's kind of like a funny little cross between both shows where just you see what happens, and now they just got them everywhere, and they take a lot of iron and they're expensive to make, but like they're ready to go.
I mean, the blacksmith like asks him, he's like, "Hey, these scorpions take a while to make
Yeah.
and they take a lot of money to create. Like, I'm gonna need some more bands if you want more of these because I mean, we haven't even talked about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ehren. 13 dragons on Team Black, maybe 12 now that Lucerys is gone, and then 4 dragons for Team Green, because there's that moment in the meeting where Allison is like, they also have dragons, and then Aegon goes, yeah, but mine are bigger. So what does that mean? Like, is that like, all right, they might have 13 Mark Gasols, but I have four Shaqs on my team. Like, I'm going to take the 4 Shaqs versus the 13 Mark Gasols. How do they stack up against one another?
They have the numbers. I think it is 12, but if I remember correctly, like half are new dragons or young dragons that wouldn't really stand a threat for another 15 years or 10 years. But really, you got like Rhaenys's dragon is legit. Obviously, Daemon's and Rhaenyra's, and then Jacerys's dragon. I think those are the 4 dragons, and have seen combat. But on the other end, you've got Vagar, who's the biggest dragon alive at this point, by far. Sunfire, I think, is Aegon's dragon, who's also a badass. I'm trying to think of the other 2, but yeah, basically they have 4 solid dragons, and the biggest of the bunch that you're looking at a B1 for a chance to bring down Vagar, and it's got to take all 3 of Team Black's strong dragons. So they don't have the numbers, but they have like the size, the scale.
What about the Recluse dragon? I think we see Daemon find like buried underneath like that cage, and he's like the biggest, baddest dragon of them all. Is that his dragon now, or am I mixing that up with Aemon's Vagar? That's Vagar.
But they're so I can't remember if they've mentioned it in the show, but there are like 6 other dragons that don't have riders who have claimed. One of them was like the king before Viserys, King Jacerys's dragon, who he's the second biggest dragon, who doesn't have a rider, and then there's like 3 or 4 other full-grown dragons, and there's another one that's a cannibal that eats other dragons, but nobody wants to fuck with that one. Yeah.
Okay, so I think what I need you to do for the next episode, Ehren, is Draw me parallels for NBA big men to all of these dragons, because I got to know which one is Shaq, which one is rookie year Serge Ibaka, which one is Cole Aldrich, like which one is which. Like give me the comps, so that way I can have a better painting in my mind of like, all right, how do these dragons actually stack up against one another? But this has been great. I mean, this is a really exciting. It's just nice to have it back. It's nice to have big event TV back. I'm happy about it. So thank you guys for joining. Before we go, we're kicking it off to my conversation with Samantha Reda about Hitman by Richard Linklater and Glen Powell. So make sure to stay around for that. Otherwise, we will see you guys on the other side talking NBA Finals tomorrow night. Peace out. I'm loving the pop off. What's good? Welcome back to the Pop Off Podcast, a conversation show about Glen Powell and his new movie, Hitman, directed by Richard Linklater. Sammy, I am a huge Richard Linklater fan. He's one of my favorite filmmakers right now. And I don't think he has like the same level of like attention as like a Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese. But I want just people to like, before we get into this conversation about them, like this guy made Dazed and Confused. He made School of Rock. I looked this up. Like he made so many movies that are important to like us as children. And then he made movies that when I became like an adult, like Before Sunrise, Before Midnight, that trilogy, that meant a lot to me too. And then Boyhood, of course, as well. But what is your relationship to not just him, but Glen Powell? Because that's the real attraction here. Is he like the hottest guy under the sun right now for you? Because personally for me, I'm like, I mean, I'm very heterosexual, but like I'd at least experiment with this guy. What is like his attraction for you?
I do think he's super hot. Is he hot in the movie per se? I mean, because I'm not like really fucking with the long hair, but we could talk about that another time. I watched Anyone But You recently. You know, he's in that movie with Sydney Sweeney.
Yep.
And his butt is so nice and firm and gorgeous. And like, yeah, he's hot. He's hot as fuck. And he should have been like on the scene way earlier, because I only started noticing him in Top Gun.
Yep.
And that was not too long ago. But regardless, he's like hot on the scale. He just got voted like one of the hottest people in the United States, I think. I could be totally wrong saying that.
Rightfully so. If I was if I was surveyed for that, I definitely would have voted him in that catalog. So the first time I ever saw him, the first time a lot of people probably ever saw him, was in The Dark Knight Rises. He gets his face smashed in by Bane at the bank. He's like on the New York Stock Exchange trading floor. And he gets his face smashed in when he's much younger. This is his second collaboration, or I think third collaboration technically, with Richard Linklater. He was in a movie called Everybody Wants Some, I think from like 2015, 2014, somewhere in that range, where he plays a college baseball player in like the late 70s, early 80s, super hot. And it's just a very Dazed and Confused-esque movie where it's very chill, very vibey, very fun. Just a group of dudes in college having a blast. In this, though, I think this is the first movie I've ever seen him be like the true lead in. Because in Top Gun Maverick, like you have Tom Cruise and Miles Teller above him.
True.
The third guy off to the side, but he's great in that. Anyone But You, he's co-starring with Sydney Sweeney. Like that's a two-legger between those two. And now we have this, and we're gonna have Twisters coming out later this summer.
I forgot about that.
How did you? What did you think of his performance as like a leading man? Because I've been thinking about him in succession to Brad Pitt. Like Brad Pitt's like the hottest dude, the funniest dude, the most charming dude. He can do all of these things, but he's also just a good actor. And I think that's where I see Powell at. Does that make sense to you?
It makes perfect sense. I thought he did perfect. Plus, I also think he wrote the screenplay. Exactly. What a genius. I think he did great. I think he fit the part perfectly. I think he morphed into exactly who he needed to morph into for this part. I mean, he's giving like the next generation, even though he's a little bit older. Like I want to say he might be like 32 or something. That's not that old, but like he is definitely next Brad Pitt level, especially because he's hot. You know what I mean?
Okay. So let's set the movie up for what it is. Because Hitman, new movie that just came out on Netflix last week. It's getting like it's the number one movie on Netflix right now, rightfully so.
Yeah, it's good.
I think it helps that his face is on the cover of it, and like people see him, they're like, I want to watch something with him in it. But it is based on a true story about a gentleman named Gary Johnson, who was a psychology and philosophy professor at the University of New Orleans. And on the side, part-time, he would work. He was fascinated by like technology and like the way that he could use it. And so he wanted to work with the New Orleans Police Department. So he would help discover and uncover and bust people that wanted to hire a hitman. Naturally, that buddy Jasper, who I think is great in this movie, gets in a little bit of trouble, experiences some cancel culture for beating up a group of teenagers. I wish we would have been able to see the video of that in this movie. I think that would have just been hysterical. And Gary has to step into the role. And now Gary, like, you think Glen Powell, you think badass. You think, like, you know, new A-lister, just got done banging Sydney Sweeney in a movie. Yeah. That's not really what his character is in this. He's a guy who is
not at all
teaching, you know, Friedrich Nietzsche. He's, like, obsessed with his cats and bird watching. He has 3 cats, and they're named, like, Id and Ego and Super Ego or whatever, just off of, like, philosophy shit, whatever.
Super Ego.
I think that was really cute. But, like, he's a dork, and he has to step into this role, and he discovers that he's really, really good at it, like, from the rip. Did that work for you? Like, did you believe that a guy that was, like, this much of a nerd could become this, you know, excellent actor to a certain extent?
If you think about it, nerds are smart, obviously. And you had to be smart to be in that position to try to manipulate someone into saying what you want them to say to get them in trouble, like exactly what they were doing. Like, they wanted them to say, like, please kill this person so that they can arrest them. I think he did incredible. And he looked ugly. Like, usually I want to fuck him, like, any day of the week, but, like, that day, I didn't. Unfortunately, no. He, like, played ugly really well. He played dorky really well. The fake hair, assumingly, looked good. I mean, didn't look good on him. Looked good for that part. Made him look worse. But believable, yeah, I would believe it. And I was looking up the real Gary Johnson. There weren't necessarily similarities in their appearance, per se. But, like, I think he did great. I think he was believable. I think he was great for the part. I mean, a hitman is not always, like, some big, scary guy. Like, you kind of need to be, like, docile. You know what I mean?
So that's what I wanted to ask was, like, you know, he plays several different hitmen in this. He plays a Russian oligarch at one point. He plays...
Yeah, that was awesome.
Which one was your favorite hitman? What was your favorite one that stood out? Because I'll give you mine as you think about yours. I
already know it because I wrote it in my notes.
There's one between him and, like, a little, like, high school boy who he defines as a little future school shooter. And the kid offers him, like, $12 and some change and 5 hard copies of, like, a PS5 game, including Mortal Kombat and Assassin's Creed, which I thought was really cute.
I forgot about that.
And he asks him to go, do you really want to kill your mom, Monty? That will make you an orphan. And the kid goes, that's the point. Kill the bitch. And he's like, this is a little fucking future school shooter. And that was to, like, get across the point that he would adjust these characters that he would build based on the level of income of the person that he was working with, because he looked them up on social media before, right? So he's like, I'm going to step into this as an actor. I'm going to research this person. I need to play the fantasy, essentially, of what they want a hitman to be. And so for that kid, he's like, all right, I'm just going to be a scumbag with a tattoo, like neck tats, all this kind of shit, and I'm just going to do it. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
It was brilliant. I liked the one where he was Snope. No, it looked like Snope. Wait, am I saying it then? Snope? Oh my god, am I saying that wrong?
Snape. Oh, Severus Snape? Yeah.
Snape from freaking Harry Potter. Me and Tommy wrote that down in our notes. We're like, okay, we need to make sure of this one. Yeah, he looked just like Snape. That was my favorite one. But I like the school shooter one. That's a great one. I totally forgot about that. But, like, exactly, you have to be smart to, like, research these things and adapt to the character. You know what I mean?
Yes, and he also has, like, the experience of listening in on however many of these calls that he's been on, because he's in the truck with the team. So he kind of knows, like, what role to play. But he's, like, really anxious about it when he has to go to it. Like, he goes to Jasper in his car, and Jasper's like, what the fuck are you doing here? He's like, well... Yeah,
Jasper looks like the guy from Schitt's Creek.
He does look like him. He's actually in Everybody Wants Some, too, which is fun. I really like that actor.
Interesting. Okay, I love that.
So he's going to him, and he's like, all right, I got to get your mic and transmitter because Claude told me to do so. And he's like, why? He's like, because I got to go step in. He's like, you? Really? He's like, I feel like there are more eligible candidates. And he steps in. He's a natural. I thought the movie did something really, really interesting where I think it's like 20 minutes into it. Tell me if you knew this already, because I didn't. They essentially say, all right, where is it? You know, people feel almost disappointed that hitmen don't really exist. This idea that there are people out there at a retail level you can just hire to eliminate your worst relationship issues, facilitate some money scheme, or usually a combination of both. It's a total pop culture fantasy. But because hitmen have been a staple of books, movie, and television for the last 50 years, good luck getting anyone to believe their existence is all a myth. But of course, my job is not to debunk the fantasy, but rather become their fantasy. and I take that part of the job very seriously. Did you know this? I was totally under the impression that hitmen just existed and were just out in downtown Des
No,
Moines.
see, Ralph, this is the thing. Hitmen do exist. I'm in the true crime community, okay? They exist. Like, people do hire people to kill other people. Like, this is a total thing. And it's not like you have to access the dark web. You need, like, a VPN. Like, I've been on the dark web. Hitmen exist. This man obviously has not been on the dark web. People do kill. I mean, you see this all the time. Look up Dahlia Dippolito or whatever her name is.
Dahlia
She hired a hitman to
Dippolito?
kill.
That's a great name.
It's something like that. Okay, I'm really wrong with the last name. No. Yeah. You can look it up on YouTube. Actually, you know what? She did get arrested because her person was like exactly what he was. He caught her in the act and arrested her.
Okay, but all right. At the same time, like, I've seen The Sopranos, and I know that the Italian mafia
They do exist.
and those might not be quote unquote hitmen for hire, but they are murderers.
Yeah.
Right. So like murderers exist, but like the dark web. Like, is it possible? Like, anybody can order anything from the dark web. Like, you can order heroin from the dark web. Like, that's an insane thing.
Yeah.
But the actual action of ordering somebody to kill somebody, like, it doesn't. I don't know. I always thought it was just like kind of easy, and they're painting it out to be like, no, like, it's just the feds.
Okay, I'm with you because I think it might be kind of easy. I think if I really put my heart into it and really wanted someone dead, like, I could find a hitman. I think you just got to know the right places on the dark web. I'm serious.
Well, you better not actually do that because this is a recorded conversation and they will be able to use this as evidence. So it's like,
I do not need anybody dead at this very moment. So, I mean, I would like that. I would like the job that he had.
oh,
Like,
really?
bait people. I think I could bait people like really good. Even though I know you wouldn't see it for me, Ralph, but like, I
No,
think
it's
I could
not
do it.
that. It's just like, I'm thinking about it from my perspective. It's like skydiving. Like, that sounds like it'd be a cool thing if I could do it, but I wouldn't do it. You know, like, I wish I had that ability in me, but I just don't have the courage. So a fun
think you do.
fact about this is that you mentioned that you liked him when he dressed up as Snape. For all the characters that he plays, you mentioned that he, wrote the script with Linklater.
Uh-huh.
Every time he would show up on the set, he would show up in character of who he was going, like that costume that he was wearing that day. And Linklater hadn't read that part of the script yet, and so it was always a surprise to him. And so he would have to go out and find a location and be like, okay, this is where we're going to shoot this person at today. And I just thought that was brilliant because it's like, that's a fun little
That is
relationship those two have.
brilliant. I want to work on a movie set. I would be so good at this.
We haven't talked
It's
about
so unfortunate.
maybe the bottle rocket of this movie, and that is Adria Arjona. Everything you said about Glen Powell and his butt, I want to do everything to every inch of her body. She might be the most attractive person I've ever seen on a screen. Like, straight
She's
up.
higher than him. She's higher than him. I would rather make out with her than make out with him at this point. She was the hottest girl I've ever seen. I was going to ask you if she's been in any other movies because I didn't recognize her. And, you don't not recognize a face like that.
So she's been in like the typical like Netflix action blockbusters. Like, she was in Triple Frontier. She was in Six Underground.
Never seen it.
A couple of movies that
Never
are
seen it.
borderline unwatchable. I'm not the biggest fan of either of them just because that's not really my genre. She was in Morbius. There's something else that I'm missing. She was in Pacific
Yeah,
Rim.
never seen any of these.
Yeah, so she's been in like some not so great like action movie stuff. But I thought she had like the chops to be like a bona fide actor. Like, she's selling me like on the drama and the relationship of this, where I think like normally she would just be like, in an action movie, like honestly like a sweaty piece for men to objectify, which is like kind of sad. But now it's like,
But it works.
this motherfucker
works.
can act. Like, she's going head to head with Glen Powell, who is like one of the biggest rising stars in Hollywood, and she's like, hey, I can make anything sexy. Like, just put me in a scene where like, I might be talking about. Okay, let me ask you about this. When she initially pops up, I thought she was like,
Tommy wants to say
what
hi.
up?
Sorry.
What's popping? When she initially popped up, I'm like, this is too good to be true. Did you experience the same thing where it's like she's going to turn, something's going to be fucked up with her?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guessed the whole thing. And I was like, let me guess. I don't want to ruin the movie. You know what happens at the end. I was like, okay, the guy he's going to meet is totally going to be her ex-husband. Like, I called that from a mile away.
We're 14 minutes into this. We can spoil it now. If you haven't seen the movie and you want to watch the rest, if you want to listen to the rest of the conversation, then watch the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I was under the impression the entire time that she was going to kill him. I thought she was going to be like working with like a
Killed
mob.
Glen Powell?
Yes, I thought she was going to be like affiliated with a cartel or something like that. Just because like when movies like this happen, I'm like, this is just too good to be true. And I thought that Linklater would flip it on its head. But I think what's interesting about this movie is that he's more interested in their relationship than he is any of the murder stuff. Like we only spend so much time like actually following that. Like a lot of the time we spend with them is just, you know, them in the bubble bath, them going out for ice
them
cream,
getting freaky,
them getting cute, them
getting hot and steamy.
Hot and steamy. There's a whole sex scene in this movie, like that they actually like show. I'm like, come on, let's go. Sex is back.
Yeah, no, but we needed that. You know, you always got to add a little love and romance and sex into a movie.
But there's not enough movies with sex anymore. Like there's romance in movies, but like they never show people fucking anymore. And that was like a staple of the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do love a nude scene. I could have
used a full frontal nude
male
for
frontal.
both. Yeah, because don't you see a little bit of him in Anyone But You? Like you see some hints, right?
You see like Sydney Sweeney's tits, I guess. Like kind of. I mean, don't think you can't miss those things.
Yeah, I mean they're all over Euphoria. Like we've seen them enough by now. But like I was like Gone Girl. There's a shot in Gone Girl of the
Ben
side
Affleck
of
in the shower.
Side of Ben Affleck's dick in the shower, and it's just like, holy shit, that's why he's so confident. I got to know what Glen Powell is working with. Like it sounds bad, but like that's how I kind of measure a movie star a little bit in my head. Like I know Brad Pitt's got something on him.
No. Rumor has it. Okay, I know this is like very far fetched, but there's rumors that Brad Pitt has a small wee wee. In Glen Powell, I almost see it being like, I have this like X-ray vision type of thing where I can just guess, and like he's given slightly below average.
How often are you using that super X-ray power? Is that like something like when we met the first time in college, you're like, this is Murph's best friend. Like, let me measure this guy up really quick. Let me see if like him or Hotto, things like that. Like, is that every dude that you run across? Like, you know, you shake hands in a business meeting, like a new prospect comes across your guys' table. You're like, small dick. I can make this guy.
Yeah, I can guess him from a mile away. I'll be like, hairy butt. He has a hairy butt. I can definitely guess it from a mile away. And for him, like, unfortunately, I'm seeing like a little, and like Brad Pitt too. You can tell Brad Pitt has a small one, which you wouldn't think he would, but you can kind of tell.
You know what? That's interesting because like, because with like girls, it's like, all right, you can tell if somebody has big boobs or a big butt. Yeah. There's not really like a lot to change in like the, you know, vagina area. But for a dude, like we're covering up those parts unless we're wearing gray sweats. And so it's like women, it's like it's out there. Like they can put it out there for public's sake. Like you can do any Google image of any woman ever and just like find out. But with dudes, it's like you either got to be in Gone Girl or you got to have Sammy Reda by your side measuring somebody down.
Oh, I'll tell you. I will tell you. I'll be like, yeah, I'm not seeing too much on that one. And that's how I feel about Glen Powell, kind of.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about
in a weird way.
Let's talk about the ending of this movie then.
Okay. Because love it.
We have a scenario where Jasper is, you know, fully aware of the entire situation. He reveals that he's been following them, that they've been working together, or not even working together necessarily. Actually, let's talk about the best scene of the movie. My favorite scene of the movie, where he's supposed to go in and interrogate her as the fake hitman for the second time, right? Because originally she's a client. He goes back and he meets her again a bunch of times. They start dating, all this kind of good stuff.
When he pulls up the thing and like
pulls up the notes app on his phone, and they're listening. That scene right there, it's going to be, I think, one of my 5 or 6 favorite scenes of the year. Like that's the one that's like, all right,
that was a great
this
one.
is 4.5, 5-star territory for a movie. I'm like, this is just so brilliant. That is movie star shit right there. Like that's where it's like, oh my god, this guy's got it. Like I knew it in Top Gun Maverick. I could feel it.
Yeah, no, I think they did perfect, and they acted it out so well. Just the flow of it, the motion of it. I mean, that was a great scene. I will totally agree with you on that.
Because there's almost like, I like the way it ended. A different level of acting that you have to reach in that kind of scene. Because like when you have to, you're obviously already acting because you're already in the movie, but you're acting inside of your acting. It's like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Leo is playing Rick Dalton, and there's cameras around him, and he has to play whatever that cowboy is, and he's got the little girl on his lap, and it's like that's a whole other level where you're performing as a performer, and it's just like this like cycle of just crazy, just I mean honestly just stardom. And that's my favorite scene in the film. So then that happens,
that was a great one.
And Jasper's like, fuck this, I'm aware of it, and he takes her kind of hostage, and Glen Powell shows up, Gary shows up, and you know Much to his surprise, it turns out that I forgot her name, but Adria Arjona's character poisoned him.
Yeah.
And she might have given him a little bit too
Yeah,
much
hot.
poison.
Love that. Smart. Drugged him. Like with what? I would love to know, but I digress.
Hot is the first thing that you said. That's a little bit crazy.
I love an evil girl. Like in Gone Girl, like she's everything to me.
But she's
like,
not
I
evil.
love an evil girl.
She doesn't strike me as evil. I mean, she did kill a guy.
Her husband killed.
Yeah.
She wanted her husband killed.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess he was like a little abusive.
Maybe I'm ignoring the red flags here, but like, the whole point of the movie, I think the message of it is that like it's not just this steamy romantic comedy action adventure movie. It's that you can redefine yourself, people can change, live an inspired life, try something new, get weird. Like he's talking about that all the time in front of his classes. Some of my favorite scenes actually were the moments where he's giving the lectures to his classes and he's talking about what it takes to be like the human that you've always wanted to become, right? And so like there's life lessons in this movie. And it
is inspiring.
They might take it a little bit far where it's like, all right, we're gonna kill a person. But I think that's like the message that I'm taking away is like that's what it takes. So you have to take extreme risks if you want to get to the place and have the people in your life that you want to have. Because then we flash forward and we're at the dinner table with his son and his daughter, and it's like 5 or 6 years later or whatever. And the movie ends with my favorite line in the movie: "All pie is good pie." And like that's just brilliant. I thought that was so fucking good.
It was brilliant. It was a great way to end it too, especially because he had pie at the first time. You know what I mean? I thought it was great. I thought it was genius. I think they're both geniuses. I think the writers are geniuses. I loved that movie. And you're right. It was good. It was inspiring. It makes you want to like go out and like try something new,
but not kill people.
And not kill.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to kill anybody, but like you have to take great lengths to do what you want to do, and you kind of have to be emotionless. I mean, I think he was kind of tweaking about the fact that he had to kill someone, but she was all like, who gives a fuck?
She's like, been there, done that, put a plastic bag on. But actually,
she's like, this guy doesn't really matter.
That's the moment where he's thinking to himself, he's like, I've created all of these calculated situations in my head already. Now I actually know what to do when I need to put it in practice. So that was interesting to see him thinking about it in real time of like, what would a hitman do? Because he goes from fake hitman to real hitman in that moment.
Did we ever see how they disposed of them? I can't remember. No, disposed of Jasper.
They flash forward after that. Like they don't show you how they get rid of him or anything like that. But like, I mean, there's a weird moment in the movie where he's talking about like it's the very first one where him and the guy in that restaurant are kind of like interrogating each other a little bit, and he's like, I'll blow up their head. And their teeth will go everywhere.
Put a grenade in their mouth, and I was thinking that too. I was like, man, that's like you giving people ideas.
Yeah, for real.
That's like a surefire way to get away with murder. But like, I digress.
You're giving the real hitmen out there something to work with, dude. Like that's kind of fucked up.
And real hitmen exist, and I will stand by that.
That's the takeaway you want listeners to have is that real hitmen are out there, and if you actually need to get rid of somebody, just do it.
Yes, I wrote this in my notes. When I was watching the movie, I had a little notes app and I was writing it in my notes, and I wrote in my notes, okay, but hitmen actually like totally exist. I think they do.
I'm eager to believe that they don't, because I don't want to ever do somebody so wrong that like I'm like the subject of it, and I don't think I would. I'm not sure if I'm that.
No,
kind of guy.
You're not killable.
I think if you ask the right person, I might be. But yeah, no, I love this movie. I think this is, I haven't seen as many movies this year, which is unfortunate, but I expect over the next couple of months, I'm going to see Inside Out 2 tonight. The Bike Riders comes out next week. Bunch of good movies coming out. Twister.
I do want to see Twister.
So I wanted to ask you this actually. If you have like we could do a whole episode on this, but just like off the top of your head, you have a Miles Teller, you have Zendaya, you have Tom Holland, Florence Pugh, Timothy Chalamet, all of these movie stars that are under like 36, 37 years old. Where does Glenn like fall in that hierarchy for you? Like, is he like the one where it's like, okay, I can put him on any movie and he can carry it on his shoulders, or is like a Timmy above him?
Okay, riddle me this. I do think Timmy might slightly be above.
Sure.
Only because he's in really good movies, like Call Me By Your Name, Bones, and all. I mean, I didn't see Wonka, but like he did Wonka. You know what I mean? I would say Timmy's above him, but I know that and whoever they is, I don't know who I'm talking about. there's like a list just released of like the newest best up and coming actors. All those people are on it, including Glen Powell. And I remember on the podcast I was listening to, I'm pretty sure it was Dave Portnoy. He was just like, Glen Powell's a little older than all these people, but he's just kind of now having his moment, a well-deserved moment. But like he's having a moment now.
But I would argue that's a good thing that he's a little bit older, because Timmy, it's like almost like he's boyish. Tom Holland, boyish.
I mean, I wouldn't fuck Tim. I would not fuck Timothy Chalamet. I would break his bones.
Right, like they're just like little guys.
I should be in bones and all.
You want to be the cannibal that he eats? He's like, he's just got like I don't know what. Like he's in Dune and he can lead Dune. He looks like a badass in that, but I'm not gonna buy him as a badass if he's walking down the street right here. Whereas with Glen, it's like
you want to break his jaw.
Yeah, Glen, it's like I would believe if he was playing like a wide receiver in a sports movie, like for like an NFL team or something like that. Timmy, it's like
his butt is plump.
You might be able to put him at kicker or something like that. You've been talking about the male butt a lot.
He couldn't even do kicker.
Is that like an asset that you look for? Because like I've heard that from some girls, I just never know. Or is it just like a nice little cherry on top?
In anyone but you, they show his butt, and it's like the nicest male butt I've ever seen in my life. It's like perfect. It's better than girls' butts.
And you like that?
Like, yeah, it's cute. It's cute.
Okay, because like you know, like girl butts, it's like
Timmy probably got nothing down there.
Like girl butts, it's like you got to have it. Like we got to have some butt down there. For guys, it's like I know what kind of butt I have, and it's not the best in the world, but like it's got some plumpness to it or whatever. But I've never like a girl's never like I can't talk to you.
Yeah, I'm never really looking at Tommy's butt.
Yeah, right. You're just looking at that print, dog, and those khakis. That's all you're worried about. That frontal print. I think that's a.
I mean, speaking of Timothy Chalamet, he's got a slinger down there.
Oh yeah,
and you know
for
it
for sure. He's got some Davidson.
Short guys randomly do.
Yeah.
Short guys randomly do. It's just like a thing. I don't know.
And the confidence too. Like that definitely has to help. I mean, dated Kylie for a while. Like I think they might still be dating. I'm not sure.
He's still dating Kylie. She's gonna freaking. I don't even know what they could do. She's got to be throwing him around that room, breaking his bones.
Yeah, I've imagined it a couple times in my head, and it just doesn't work for me. Like he's probably disappearing into her butt crack. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
She's probably like takes over.
Yeah.
He probably pegs her. Type of shit. I'm just kidding.
All right, this podcast has gone off the rails as it usually does with Sammy Reda.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just like.
We have to find more reasons to get you on because you are the best, and I thank you for having you.
Okay.
As always.
Of course, I watch hella movies, so just hit me up whenever.
All right, so yeah, I'll be seeing Inside Out 2 tonight. The Bike Riders comes out next week, starring Austin Butler and Tom Hardy. Austin Butler's another guy we didn't mention. He's kind of in our range. Love him.
Yeah, he is.
And yeah, we got Twisters coming out later this summer too. So we'll talk about those movies once they start coming out, and we'll get you on.
Hell yeah, I'll see Twister.
All right.
We can talk about it.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you for listening. We will see you on the other side. Everybody have a great weekend. And watch Hitman if you've made it this far in the pod and you didn't watch all of it. Sorry for spoiling it, but not really. Just go watch it. All right. We'll see you on the other side. Peace out.
I'm loving the pop off.